61 new projects worth nearly $6.2 billion entered the Inter-American Development Bank's pipeline between May and August 2018. The rapid growth in the pipeline over the second third of the year presents the opportunity for partners to think through their strategy for engaging with the IDB in the upcoming year. Today, we're going to be covering some of the specifics of the IDB funding landscape and tips for success when it comes to this donor. So the IDB has recently been in the news. During Foramic's 2018 conference in Colombia, which is the main event on financial inclusion in Latin America and the Caribbean, IDB Lab has reiterated its commitment to boosting innovation to promote social inclusion in the region. Could you tell us a little bit more about this?
Of course. And first of all, thank you all for joining this webinar. IDB is an exciting donor to explore, and I hope that you all find this webinar insightful and useful for your work.
So talking a little bit more about data, what is available for our members to find about future funding opportunities at the IDB, and how easy is it for them to find this sort of information? So how can all of our listeners utilize the Devex platform to find all this information that you've told us about?
Sure. So at Devex, we monitor several sources on a daily basis, everything from funding announcements, launch projects or partnerships, tenders, and awardees. When assessing what opportunities are out there, we can easily get all of this information in one place. So by looking, for instance, at funding activity, the purple category in the middle of the page, we get early funding commitments or any newly launched partnerships or initiatives. So for example, the IDB Labs blockchain example launching and the MOS, they can all be found there. The category of programs to the right, they include information on projects that are approved and that contain more specific outline, whereas tenders and grants contain a list of tangible opportunities. So it's here where invitations to bids and requests for proposals can be found. And this is the chance to win awards, unless, of course, there's subcontracting opportunities later on. And lastly, the greenish category, that is the contract awards, and that is what formed the basis for the visualization you just saw. And we can find many past awardees for any tender under any project.
Before we wrap up, I want to note that the opportunities to ask our team questions is not limited to these webinars. In fact, you can reach out with questions about specific opportunities or funding trends, and we will get back to you with an informed response. Simply send your questions to analysts@devex.com, and we'll make sure it gets to the right person. I also wanted to make sure you all had access to our most recent coverage of the IDB, so we'll share links to those articles in the chat box now. With that, we've unfortunately come to the end of our scheduled time for this webinar, but thank you all so much for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed the conversation. As I mentioned, a survey will appear in your browser once you exit the webinar. If you have just 2 minutes, we would really appreciate your feedback about the webinar, as well as your ideas for future events. And if you want to watch the webinar again, we'll be emailing it to you shortly and posting it on devex.com, so look out for the link in the near future. And again, thank you so much, Maya, for taking the time to speak with us today. And on behalf of Devex, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in and hope that you will join us for our next digital event.